Welcome to the SEC Sports Guys. I'm your host, Hunter Ames, joined here with Jason Lee. Lemansky Flates couldn't be with us. He's out of town for the Christmas break. We hope that you and your family had a great Christmas this year. This show is going to be a little bit different than we normally do. We're going to name our top 10 stories in the football world and the SEC, starting with number 10, Les Miles, named Home Depot Coach of the Year.
Very well deserving here. He's done a phenomenal job with the Tigers this year, has them ready for the national championship coming up in a couple weeks against Alabama. Overcome huge odds. The suspension of Jefferson leading into the season, had a backup quarterback in Lee coming in, did a great job. The best defense, no doubt, in the country.
You're right. He's a very exciting person to watch. I like watching his press conferences personally. You're never not sure if he's just playing around or what he's doing. But and he doesn't come across always as that smart of a guy, but he's very intelligent. He knows what he's doing with the football team.
Yeah, he gets a lot of flack for some of his antics on the sideline, some of his play calls, game management. But if you look at his record, he always seems to win the big game. I mean, the big game against Alabama this year, Auburn 2 years ago on the last second pass in the end zone, he somehow finds a way every single year.
You're right. So at number 10 again, Les Miles, Home Depot Coach of the Year. Moving on, number 9, Jordan Jefferson's fight and suspension. I know you hit on that a little bit. Elaborate on that a little bit. What was the young guy thinking?
Yeah, I mean, just a very immature mistake here. Goes out to a bar, gets in a fight with a couple other teammates, a couple frat guys at a local bar. You know, he had to remember this is the number 1 team in the country. Right before football season, you're the starting quarterback of LSU. Just a dumb mistake here. Luckily for him, the charges were dropped. He, pled to a lesser charge, so he was able to come back in the middle of the year. Jarrett Lee did a phenomenal job to start the season. Jefferson didn't take back over the starting role until the Alabama game. But yeah, very, very immature. I truly believe in second chances. I think he learned from his mistake and has been a model citizen since then.
Yeah, you're right. And you're talking about Jarrett Lee. I bet that was tough for him. He led them on to win all those games, and then as soon as Jordan Jefferson got back, it took a couple games, but then he was back in the mix. So, but it looks like he's had no problems. He's over on the sideline, still helping call with the plays, and a lot of respect for that young man as well. So again, number 9, Jordan Jefferson. Number 8 on our list is the BCS blow-up and controversy. Expand on that a little bit.
I mean, you have a year here where you've got multiple one-loss teams and everybody's fighting and arguing about who should go in the championship. Obviously, we know they selected Alabama for the one-loss team. Their only loss coming against the team they're playing in the national championship, LSU. But if you look back, Oklahoma State had an argument, Oregon had an argument, Stanford had an argument. So the big thing with the BCS is who do you pick? And does that lead to a possible playoff? The SEC athletic directors and the president, or the NCAA, the presidents are going to have to decide on that. But it's definitely a big controversy this year with multiple teams thinking they had a shot at the national championship.
Do you think playoffs are in the future?
I think it's all about money. I think that they're enjoying the money that they're getting from all these bowl games. Even some of these smaller bowl games are huge payouts. I just don't think they do right now. I mean, they keep saying they want to stress academics. They don't want the kids being out of school on all these road trips. If you go to a playoff, unless you go the +1 system, if you go to just a full-out playoff, you're talking about 3-4 consecutive weeks in a row. I'm not sure that they're there right now. I think the best bet right now would be a +1 game.
Okay. Moving into number 7, coach firings and hirings within the SEC. Houston Nutt. Gone from Ole Miss.
Houston is a very likable guy. He's very likable. His players play hard for him. They give anything for him. But now that he's been at Ole Miss and fired, been at Arkansas and then left to go to Ole Miss, one thing we've seen from Houston Nutt is that he's a great motivator. He gets his guys to play hard, but he's getting beat in the recruiting battle. Ole Miss is just the past couple of years has just been getting killed in the state of Mississippi by Mississippi State and the other SEC teams, and that's where he struggled at Arkansas as well. So, if he were to, get another job, the recruiting's definitely going to have to go up.
Next one, James Franklin, named head coach of Vanderbilt this year. I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's done great things with that Vanderbilt program. Talk a little bit about
Absolutely. James Franklin has put a spark that has desperately been needed in Vanderbilt. You know, Vanderbilt's been looked at as a baseball and a basketball school the last few years, but now people have been watching the football program. You know, one of their best seasons. You know, they won 6 games. Very well could have been 9 games, as we talked about in our previous show. Had a couple close games that just couldn't pull it out there at the end. But he's definitely instilled a confidence in Vanderbilt that they haven't had in previous years.
All right, and Urban Meyer, last one, left Florida, took a year off to spend time with family and take care of his health. So I guess a year was enough because now he's headed to Ohio State.
Yeah, very interesting storyline here. I mean, unfortunately, I know a lot of people are mad in Florida the way things were handled there. If he truly wanted to spend time with his family or had a bunch of health problems, you would think he'd be out longer than a year. He sees this opening at Ohio State and immediately jumps on it. And I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup. They put Florida and Ohio State in a bowl against each other. So I'm not going to say that, you know, there's going to be any ill will or bad blood there, but I think the Florida players definitely have something more to play for here.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take our first break. When we come back, we'll continue our list of the top 10 SEC football moments this year. Hey, welcome back. We'll go ahead and continue the show with number 6, Trent Richardson, Tyrann Mathieu, Heisman candidates this year. We had talked about on the show Trent Richardson we thought was going to win the Heisman Trophy itself. Tyrann Mathieu made his way in those last couple weeks of the season. Very impressive in the SEC Championship, not enough to get all the votes that he needed. And then Trent Richardson not getting near as many votes as we thought he would, coming in at 3rd place overall. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I think the two kind of canceled each other out. Sometimes when you have 2 candidates from one conference or one region of the country, I think voters kind of cancel them out. These are by far the 2 best athletes in the SEC. Mathieu is a complete dominator on defense, special teams. He can completely change a game. And then Richardson, he's averaging 6 yards a carry. Anytime he carries the ball 6 yards, I mean, that's just phenomenal for a running back. He can break it open at any time. So definitely 2 well-deserving candidates for a Heisman potential.
I got a little bit. Trent Richardson, does he go pro this year?
I think he does. I mean, there's, you know, maybe come back next year and maybe be the favorite for the Heisman. But, I mean, you're talking about playing for the national championship, maybe possibly winning the national championship, a Heisman finalist. I don't think it gets any better as a college athlete. I think his stock is about as good as you're going to get. I think he's a for sure first-round draft pick.
I think he's one of the best running backs I've seen in some time in the SEC, much less college football. He's just very powerful back. We saw that. You can watch highlights all day long of it. One NFL team's definitely going to be very happy.
I agree.
Number the game of the century. LSU Tigers headed into Bryant-Denny to take on the Alabama Crimson Tide. It took an overtime field goal to win that one. LSU wins it. We're going to see the rematch. But let's talk about that game itself.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who want to see Oklahoma State, Stanford, somebody else in the national championship, they go back to this game and say, well, yeah, you dubbed it the game of the century, but it was only 9-6. That is SEC football. It is by far the two best defenses in the country. And I think when we get to the national championship, we'll talk more about this in a later show, but I think that's what you're going to see is two dominant defenses. To win a championship, you got to have a defense, and both teams are phenomenal in that aspect.
Yeah, it was 9-6. It was a long, hard game. I felt bad for Alabama fans, I guess, in a sense of just continuing to miss field goals. Those weren't easy field goals, though. I mean, we're at 40-plus yards trying to kick a field goal in a high-pressure game. What do you think was going through those field goal kickers' mind?
Well, like you said, a couple of them were long. I mean, it was a 45-yard field goal, 50-yard field goal. I kind of hate to see Saban put him in that situation. Yeah. But you got no choice. I mean, big time, the lights were on. I mean, all you can do is just try to clear your head of the misses and say, okay, I'm going to make this next one. I don't think he's going to have any problems here in the national championship game. I think it'll be fine. Both teams will be full strength. It's going to be an exciting game. I think we're going to see a little bit more offense. So I think they got it right. These are the two best teams in the country.
All right, moving into number 4, the SEC West and their dominance of the East. They've owned them for the last few years. Expand on that just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the West was 12-6 over the East. I mean, it wasn't even close. You had Alabama and LSU, obviously the top two teams, but you also had a very good Arkansas team. Auburn was kind of average, dropped down a couple spots here, but still took care of a couple of the East teams, beat South Carolina. Georgia was the only team that got any respect for the East. They went 3-0 against the West, but the other teams just could not win any games. All the East teams combined only won three games besides Georgia. So it was just a complete dominance, and I think that kind of hurt the conference a little bit.
Yeah, you talk about over in the East, South Carolina coming in number 2 in the East, lost to a 7-5 Auburn team. Was that home, away?
Right, it was at South Carolina.
In South Carolina. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, it was tough goings in the SEC East this year. Moving into number 3, the death of Larry Munson. Larry Munson, radio announcer for the Georgia Bulldogs for many, many years. I'm not quite sure how many, but I know it's been a lot. I know growing up in Atlanta as a young boy, a lot of my friends are Georgia fans, and so we would watch the Georgia games on TV, but we would mute the TV and listen to Larry Munson, and it was exciting listening to him. You get chills from just watching him. It was almost like he was on the sidelines with them and running down with it, and I enjoyed that.
I totally agree. He is a definite icon, a true legend in his profession there. He was over 60 years with Georgia. Something, doing a little research here. One thing I didn't know about him, he actually started as a broadcaster for Vanderbilt back in the 60s. He went to Vanderbilt, asked them to do the broadcast, so he started there before he was at Georgia, and he got the Georgia job by being a broadcaster for the Atlanta Braves when they moved to Atlanta from Milwaukee. Just a class guy. As you said, when you listen to Larry Munson, you always feel like you're right there on the field with the players, and that's exactly what you need out of a radio announcer. Just truly a great guy, truly going to be missed in the whole college football community.
All right. And we had to break. We're gonna leave you with a clip. It was as Buck Belue to Danny Lindsay against Florida. It was in the 1980 season, the season they went on to win the national championship.
Back third down on the 8. In trouble. Got a block behind him. Going to throw and a run. Complete to the 25, to the 30. Lindsey's got 35, 40. Lindsey's got 45, 50, 45, 40. Run, Lindsey. 25, 20, 50, 10, 5. Lindsey's got. Lindsey's got. Lindsey's got. Well, I can't believe it. 92 yards, and Lindsey really got in a foot race. I broke my chair. I came right through a chair, a metal steel chair with about a 5-inch cushion. I broke it. The booth came apart. The stadium fell down. Now they do have to renovate this thing. They'll have to rebuild it now. This is incredible. This game has always been called the world's greatest cocktail party. Do you know what is going to happen here tonight? And up at St. Simon's and Jekyll Island and all those places where all those dog people have got these condominiums for 4 days. Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top. We were gone. I gave up. You did too. We were out of it and gone. Miracle.
Welcome back to the SEC Sports Guys. Number 2 on our list of storylines in football in the SEC this year. Number 2, Mark Richt on the hot seat. He started the season. Many Georgia fans didn't know maybe this might be his last season. Take a loss to Boise State to start the season. Started the season off 0-2, and then he goes on a 10-win streak all the way to SEC East champions. Propels them into the SEC championship, though they go on to lose. And then here this last couple of weeks gets a contract extension. What do you make of that?
Yeah, but if you would have asked me at the beginning of the season, name one SEC coach that you think is going to get fired, I'm going with Mark Richt over Houston Nutt. I thought that, you know, a lot of Georgia fans were upset with the previous performance the last few years. A lot of them were looking closely at this. Doesn't help himself out, as you said earlier, lost his first 2, but then he gets the team together. They win 10 in a row, gets them the SEC championship game in Georgia, and now they're talking contract extension with him. He's already supposed to be up in 2013. I think they're going to extend that maybe five more years. So he's done a phenomenal job to come back from those 2 early losses, get the team together. Don't worry about what all the critics are saying on the outside. Be ready to play game in and game out, and they did a great job.
You talk about the critics, and I was going to ask you this. Mark Richt, as well as other coaches, Gene Chizik, Nick Saban, do you think they really care what the critics have to say? Do you think they pay attention to shows like this, ESPN, read the newspaper? Do they even care about what the media says?
I don't think they look too much at the TV. I don't think they read too many newspapers. I think they're too busy for that, and they don't want to get into that. I think their biggest challenge day in and day out is, what are those players doing? Are those players getting on Facebook? Are they getting on ESPN? Are they watching game day in the mornings every Saturday morning? If you have a night game, are your players sitting in the hotel room, you know, watching that and getting fed all this information that ESPN and these other outlets want them to believe? So I think the coaches do a good job of handling that from themselves, but I think the bigger challenge is, can I get my players to get that out of their head?
Good. We're going to go ahead and recap back over. Number 10, Les Miles winning the Home Depot Coach of the Year. Number 9, Jordan Jefferson's fight and then suspension. Number 8, the controversy and the blow-up within the BCS system. At number 7, coach firings and hirings. Number 6, Trent Richardson and Tyrann Mathieu making their presence known at the Heisman Candidacy Awards this year. Number 5, the game of the century. Number 6, the SEC West dominance of the East. Number 3, the death of Larry Munson. Number 2, Mark Richt on the hot seat. And number 1 for the SEC Sports Guys, storyline for football this season has got to be the SEC National Championship. It's going to feature LSU and Alabama at the Superdome down in New Orleans. It's got all the makings of a really good game. It's a rematch from the regular season game, that overtime win. It took LSU to win that one. Definitely looking forward to it. But some things played up to that to get them into it, starting with Stanford. They got beat by a couple touchdowns against Oregon to propel Alabama forward and give them what they needed. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, when Alabama and LSU played the first time with LSU beating Alabama, Alabama dropped down a couple spots, so they definitely needed some help to get back in that 2 spot. And like you said, Stanford undefeated coming in.
As you know, 3rd and 9 now, and Luck has got plenty of time. Intercepted. A horrendous throw. And Stuckey is upended by Luck at the 20-yard. 2nd down and goal. Juggle on the snap. Darren keeps it on the move. High and caught. Touchdown. Oregon strikes first.
He threw this football on time, giving Tuine a chance to get his feet down. He's got possession of the football.
1 point or 2. They snap it. They're going to throw for 2. The trickery. Caught. Got it. It's 8-0.
Now at the line of scrimmage.
2nd down and 10. Great cut by Anthony to daylight. Adios. Touchdown, LaMichael James, the leading rusher. Darren is back under pressure, drops off the screen. DeAnthony Thomas coming down the sideline, going for the end zone, and he steps in for the touchdown on a 4th and 7 call. Darren finds Huff wide open. Huff beats the corner. Breaks free for a touchdown. How about this?
Andrew Luck was probably the Heisman favorite at that point. Offense kind of sputtered against that Oregon defense. Actually wasn't really a close game. Oregon poured it on there in the second half, won by 2 or 3 touchdowns. So that definitely got Alabama up to another spot, and then they were looking for Oklahoma State to get upset a little bit later.
And they did.
They did.
Oklahoma State coming off of a week, 2 coaches, the women's basketball died in a plane crash. The guys went into the game, had a away game, Iowa State. Iowa State's one of those teams, one of those Texas Techs, one of those Louisiana Monroes that will sneak up on you and win those kind of games. And they did. They went into Iowa State, double overtime loss to Iowa State. It made Coach Rhodes over there look very good. Gave a great win for the Iowa State program.
This was the scene moments ago. Quinn Sharp, one of the most talented place kickers in all of college football. A chance to give number 2 Oklahoma State the lead. But Paul Rhodes and the Cyclones, the mighty underdogs, are still very much alive. 24-24, the start of overtime. Who has 351 yards. This is the running quarterback with 351 yards. Reverses field and run open is White. Touchdown Cyclones. And Barnett's the quarterback in the gun. Woody. Touchdown, they did it!
Pushed Alabama again. Expand on that.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma State is the one team in the country who does have, kind of an argument that we should be playing for the national championship. They won their conference championship against Oklahoma, but I think the voters in the end looked at, okay, we have an one-loss Alabama team, we have a one-loss Oklahoma State team. Who did they lose to? Alabama lost to the number 1 team in the country, LSU. Oklahoma State lost to Iowa State, and that was a very bad loss. Paul Rhodes has done an excellent job at Iowa State, does a great job with his team, but that's not really a top-notch loss there. So I think voters looked at that, and that's what propelled Alabama over Oklahoma State.
All right. Well, now I don't want to talk a whole lot about it because we're definitely going to spend next week talking about it. But let's talk a little bit about this LSU Alabama game. Things leading up to it, they have a big break, getting prepared for it. Now, you were talking about earlier about the players spending time on Facebook and ESPN. And what is this downtime going to be for the players?
The one thing I do not like about not just the national championship, but all the bowls is there's too long in between the conference championships and the bowls. These kids have too much time, you know, the holidays, to sit there and think about what's going to happen, get things in their head, look at the outside media sources getting in their head and all that. I wish we could play that a little bit sooner, but that's the circumstances that you have. They're going to have to focus. We're definitely going to give our predictions later, but I would tend, as far as the focus standpoint, I would tend to favor Alabama here because they just went through this 2 years ago. They won the national championship 2 years ago. So a lot of those players were on the team 2 years ago. They know how to handle that. When you get down to New Orleans, it's going to be crazy, media outlets everywhere. Whichever team can focus and put out all the outside distractions the best is going to be the team that comes out on top, I think.
All right. Any other last thoughts? Don't give away too much because we're going to spend
we're
probably
definitely
10, 12 minutes next week on this.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have a whole show on the national championship. It would be fun to look at these two teams. But I just think that, you know, this is definitely the top story. This clearly is number one for our show today because this is the first time two SEC teams have played for the national championship. Shows the complete dominance that the conference has in college football these days.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the SEC Sports Guys. We hope that you and your family have a happy new year. Join us again next week. We'll be breaking down that national championship game featuring LSU and Alabama. And Lemansky will join us back, too, as well. We'll spend most of the show talking about this game. We'll do a wrap-up of the rest of the other bowl games. So we'll see you next time.